Hey, everybody. Perfect timing. Miguel is here.
All right.
That's
Welcome to Brave Browser.
right. So, yeah, a little bit of Chrome sharing privacy difficulties and jumping over to different browsers. So, while people are coming in, we got Andrew Nichols from the UK, Hannah from Belgrade. So, let me remind everyone to let us know where you are watching from. And while you do that, set up Miguel's screen sharing.
Yeah, let's see if we have solved everything. Brave Browser would like to record. Sure. Sounds good. Okay. Let's see. Won't be able to welcome this. All right, so it looks like I have to quit and reopen Brave. So
Okay.
be back in
And I
2
might
seconds.
give a shout out to StreamYard.
Definitely go for it.
All right, cool. So yes, everybody, just wanted to say thanks for being here. And as usual, this is all made possible by StreamYard. Oh, there it is. And yeah, StreamYard, the multi-streaming platform, easy to use, but professional and lots of great features. Here's a little intro video to StreamYard. I believe I might be able to give you like a month free or something. So just reach out to me and I will give you the link. And he's back.
All right. Let's see if we can share screens now.
Okay, cool.
All right, window. Okay. All right.
Let's see. Yep, looks good. So I'll just switch back to this. Just don't shut it. Sometimes people set it up and then they shut it.
No, that would be terrible. That would be terrible. Let's see. StreamYard is sharing a window. Sure, that's fine. All right, cool.
So how you doing though, Miguel? You doing good?
Yeah, doing fantastic. It's been one of those days, Spent most of the day here today recording a video.
Your sound went out. Your sound went out. Yeah, weird. I don't know. Tech day. Uh-oh. Maybe check some of the audio settings. The tech gremlins are in the house.
It's a thing, man.
You're back.
Okay, there it goes. All right.
Cool. You were saying
the audio won't sound as good because now it's coming from the MacBook, but
still sounds pretty good though.
Works. Cool. Yeah, so no, I was just working on a video today. I've got a video that I'm working on that's like going to be a really good one, but it's taken me 3 days so far to record everything and I'm still not finished.
Wow.
So
3 days.
Yeah. So but I'm excited. I'm here today and really excited to be here with you and with the group. And yeah, it's going to be a good time.
Cool. Excellent. So with that, why don't you introduce yourself and then take it away from there? Yeah.
Definitely. Thank you. So my name is Miguel Quiles. I'm a professional portrait photographer, and I'm also a content creator based out of Orlando, Florida. I've been a professional photographer now for going on actually a little over 10 years now. So it's been a minute. In that period of time, I've been really fortunate to be recognized by various brands. So I am a Sony Artisan of Imagery. I've worked with a variety of different brands over the years, including Profoto, Rotolite, Westcott, Tamron. So I work with a lot of different brands. I've spoken on various platforms, including Creative Live, Photo Plus, WPPI, Shutterfest, like you name it. For the most part, I've taught photography, videography, retouching, all that stuff pretty much everywhere. Then I also have my own YouTube channel as well. So maybe some of the people that are watching right now are subscribed to my channel. And if not, if you're into learning new things, then definitely check that out. So
yep. And I just put up the banner for that. So
Sweet.
Yep.
Fantastic. And let me know in the comments, for those of you that are here watching, let me know where you're watching from, because I'm always interested to kind of know like where everybody's at. So I'm in Orlando, Florida. Drew, where are you right now?
So I'm in Los Angeles, and
LA.
yeah, originally
LA.
from
I was just there.
originally from upstate New York, but got sick of the harsh winters. I lived in Brooklyn for a bit, but harsh
Really?
winters there as well. So
Yeah.
first moved to San Francisco and then LA, and been in LA now about 16 years now, I think it is. But
Wow. Geez. Yeah, it's a whole different world in Brooklyn right now. You'd be surprised. I'm sure you've been in recent years, but if
Yeah.
you haven't, yeah, it's a whole new world out there.
yeah, with the High Line and I think the Dumbo area, like when I
Yeah.
lived there, down under the Manhattan Brooklyn overpass, Dumbo area used to be very industrial, and now I see
Mhm.
there's like theaters, restaurants, clubs, So
Yeah. It's been very much, I guess, gentrified is the word.
yeah, right.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting. I remember growing up, I lived in Orlando growing up, and I listened to hip hop music, and I always remember rappers talking about Brooklyn, and it gave me this image in my mind that Brooklyn was just this place where if you go there, you're definitely going to get shot. And then I moved to New Jersey and lived in New Jersey from like 2014 up until about 2 years ago, and went to Brooklyn all the time, and it was totally different.
Yeah.
Like I'm pretty sure that rarely, if ever, happens. So it's a whole new world up there. That's for sure.
I lived in, Brooklyn, some parts of Manhattan for 10 years, and Greenpoint, Williamsburg,
Yep.
Brooklyn Heights, I think it was. It was pretty cool. It was fine, And then Williamsburg was pretty cool for like art galleries and stuff. And there was some pretty fun
They still have a
ones.
big scene.
Yeah, I think so, right? And some really good Thai restaurants there, I believe, and stuff. So
Yep. Yeah, I mean, New York and in general is really good for all kinds of food. The only thing that I feel like I didn't really get to experience there was good barbecue.
right.
So I don't know how it is in LA, but good barbecue down here in Orlando, like there's a bunch of good ones. In New York, everything was just subpar. So I don't know if any of y'all are in New York and you found some good barbecue spots, let me know in the comments.
So cool. Well, I had some very good fish when I was in visiting Florida recently.
Oh yeah.
I even had
That's
like
what we're known for. The fishing is good down here.
Yeah, I think I had a Thai dish at one restaurant with the fish, and then I had a seafood lasagna that was quite nice.
Oh wow.
So yeah, it was good.
Yeah, we got some good eating down here. That's for sure. That's
Their skies are amazing.
Oh, the skies are incredible.
I love the skies.
Here.
And a little bit of rain, and then it comes back out like even more dramatic. It's beautiful.
Yeah, lots of colors and just it's drama, like Drama City with the clouds, especially after a storm. Yeah, it's like nothing you'll see anywhere else in the country.
Yeah, the clouds are just gorgeous and the beautiful beaming sky, So.
Oh yeah.
Shall we jump into Photoshop and let you do your thing?
Cool.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, let's do it.
Switch over to that view. There we go. That looks good already.
There we go. Fantastic. All right. So let's see. Make sure my tablet is working. All right. So let's get started. So this is what I want to do today to kind of make things really simple, because we've got a while, but realistically, to really teach retouching very thoroughly, it takes a while. Like for me, I went through several years of lessons, one-on-one lessons, group lessons, workshops, all of that good stuff, trying to learn retouching. And I learned a lot of techniques over the years, a lot of things that I use often. And then there's a lot of things that I really don't use as often. So this specific image that I'm going to work on today kind of covers the entire gamut of different things, different techniques that I would use to retouch an image. I'm going to show you all of these different techniques, but what I want to make sure that I put as a disclaimer at the beginning is that not every portrait is going to require all of these different things that I'm going to show you. However, it's a good idea for you to understand the things that I'm going to show you and just have them in your back pocket in the event that you have a specific type of portrait that might require that kind of work. And at least like, okay, I know how to fix that. Maybe I could use this tip or this technique. So that's why it's a good idea to kind of have these different things in the back of your pocket. So this specific image, I probably went in a little bit harder on this image than I normally would, but I did it with the intent of basically being able to show you all of the different layers that I would potentially add to a portrait. So, so I do want to say that up front. I'm going to show you these techniques. For your taste, you might say, you know what? Maybe I would have done this a little bit more, but I would have toned back on this specific step. That's totally fine. The cool thing about photography is that it's art and there's no right or wrong for the most part. Whatever it is that you think is right for your type of imagery, for your style, for your creative expression, fantastic. Like, go forward with that. And hopefully these tips are going to help you to get to that final image that just kind of like speaks to you and just embodies everything that you're trying to express as an artist. Hopefully it will get you to that. So as we're going through this image, I'm going to stop every so often and I want to solicit questions from you. So if you all have any questions, let me know in the comments section. I say this in all of my classes. I don't care if you think the question is too dumb, too brainy, or anything in between. There's no like dumb questions. The only dumb questions are the ones that you don't ask. Right? So we have the opportunity here today for this hour to ask any questions that you have. So if anything tickles your fancy, let me know. Just drop it in the comment section and I'll make sure that I cover that. So cool. All right, so let's get started.
And I'm going to jump in with full screen view so everyone can see the details.
Yep. Yeah, there we go. That works.
Great.
Sweet. There it is. Plus, they don't want to look at my ugly face anyway, so it's all good.
You look good. You look good. It's good smile. Good smile.
Oh boy. All right. So here's the image that we're going to be working on. This is basically, I've just taken this image and I've kicked it over from Lightroom. So it doesn't really have anything done to it. This is what the image looks like coming straight out of camera. And for many people, you might look at this image and say, you know what, straight out of camera, it looks pretty good. I would just turn this into a JPEG and just put it out on the internet. And you're totally okay to do that. Again, you're an artist, you could do whatever you want. However, for me, there are certain things with this image that I would like to do, not just with the retouching side, but also with the color grading side of things, which is really the topic of the day. But so anyway, let's get started. So I'm going to go through these layer by layer, and we're going to talk about some of the color related things here as well. So first and foremost, this is what the image looks like before, right? That's the before. This is the after, before, after. Can you guys still see that?
Yeah, looks good.
Okay, cool. All right, so we're going to go through these layer by layer here so you can see what's happening. So the first thing that I usually do is the what I call my clone cleanup layer. And this is basically just a blank layer that I created in Photoshop. The way that you do that, you just basically go to this little square down here at the bottom where it says create new layer, and it makes just a blank layer. There's nothing on this except what we're about to do to the image. So I'm going to zoom in because I've already done some stuff here, but you really have to get in kind of close to see what's happened. But I'm going to turn this off and on here and really kind of look more towards the forehead area. And you can see I just kind of went through some of the blemishes. Oftentimes I start off with this step first and foremost, which is basically create that new layer, go over to the clone stamp tool. And you want to make sure that this is not set to current layer. It needs to be set to current and below, or it's set to all layers depending on, you know, what you're doing. In this case, it only has the background layer to pull data from. So we'll just put current and below. And at this point, with the clone stamp tool selected, I could zoom in. I'll continue doing some of this so you could see, you know, what it does. Make this brush a little bigger. So if you hold down your Option key and just click somewhere nearby to the area that you want to retouch, you just kind of go in there and just kind of clean up some of these blemishes, right? So usually this is what I'm doing to start off my portraits. I'm going through with the clone stamp tool and just kind of going over some of these different areas. Some of the ones that don't clean up nicely, we clean up with a different technique and a different tool, which I'll show you here momentarily. But the clone stamp tool does a really good job. And oftentimes I could retouch an entire portrait if I'm in a rush. You don't have to use any other like crazy techniques. You could just use your clone stamp tool on a blank layer,
And Miguel,
and you're good. Mhm.
you tend to prefer the clone stamp over the healing brush for this type of, first step cleanup?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I use both. And to be really honest with you, why I like the clone stamp tool is that certain areas of the image have different kinds of texture.
Right.
And so if it's an image that's really highly or really heavily textured, I like going into the brush tool and just kind of increasing the hardness. And if it's an image that maybe I shot at like, let's say an f1.4, that I could just drop the hardness all the way down. And when it copies the skin texture, it just copies it a little bit softer.
Sure.
But I use both, to be honest with you. At different levels or at different stages of the retouching process, I use different tools. But for this one specifically, I typically start off with the clone stamp tool only, and try to get everything as much as possible that I can get with that tool. And afterwards, like say for example, you'll see that here I use the clone stamp tool and it kind of just made that area brighter. So that's one where I would just kind of leave it alone, go to some other area of the image, and just continue on. So yeah, I use different tools, but at this particular step in the game, I basically just use clone stamp just to kind of make things relatively easy.
Sure. Great.
And so, so you could see that right away. I mean, I'm talking as I'm doing this, but obviously, if I'm retouching this image and I'm by myself, like I'm breezing through this stuff, it takes just minutes to be able to do this. But so I'm going through the image in that way, basically just using clone stamp tool, super simple. And I'll do this one here because it's
And what camera do you
striking.
use? That is quite sharp, very sharp detail
Yeah.
on this. Yeah.
Yeah, this was, if I remember off the top of my head, I believe this was the Alpha 7R4
So
or
that's
the
Sony,
Alpha
right?
1. Yes, yeah, it
Yep.
was the Sony, I believe it was the Sony Alpha 7R4. These are the settings. So F11,
Sure.
1/160th of a second, ISO 100. Typically, when you're shooting at these high f-stops, which is very common for studio portraits,
Mhm.
you get a lot of detail, like a lot of detail.
Yeah.
So,
Sharp.
yeah, that's one of the things. One of the things artistically for me that kind of just speaks to me is being able to take portraits that just have a very high level of detail. Um, but there's a lot of photographers that have the exact opposite methodology, and they want to shoot everything wide open. They want it to be blurry and dreamy, and that's cool too. There's definitely space for that in the world. But for me, for my niche and the type of style that I like to shoot, I'm all about just capturing as much raw detail as possible in the camera, in the raw, and then kind of tweaking it and making it look cool in post.
Excellent. Cool.
So, so that's the first step, is just basically clone cleanup, really simple, just to clean up blemishes. And we're going to continue to do that. But the next step that I do is dodge and burn. And I'll turn that one on and off so you can see basically what's happening. And essentially this dodge and burn layer, all it's doing is basically lightening. I can lighten certain parts of the image and I can darken other parts of the image. And you tend to do that when you want to have like a nice smooth transition across the face, across the body. So it just depends on the portrait that you're taking. I'll go back out here so you can see. So you can really kind of contour the body. You can get rid of parts of the image where maybe it's distracting, right? Because there's certain things in a portrait that I want to make sure that I do as the artist to kind of manipulate the viewer to look at certain things. And the way that you do that is by kind of tweaking and playing with the highlights and shadows of an image. So dodge and burn allows you to do that. And obviously this is, already done. That's what the dodge and burn layer looks like by itself. So if you see these whitish areas, these are the parts of the image that I brightened up. And these dark parts of the image here, those are the areas where I burned, which is turning these areas of the image a little bit darker. So it looks kind of cool when you see the mask.
I was going to say, I love dodge and burning, right? It's
yeah,
cool effect.
It's fun. It's fun. I feel like sometimes, like, this is a very basic mask, but there are certain images that I'll dodge and burn where, like, the mask itself just looks like, it looks really cool.
How come with soft light it's showing it, with the neutral medium gray background as opposed to just the effect itself? Is you switch it
That,
over?
yeah, that's a good question. That is
I
a
thought
really
you were-
good question.
Yeah, I thought you were doing something different. I was like, why?
Yeah. I'm not entirely sure.
I guess once you
That's
put
kind of
the image on
interesting.
underneath, probably it disappears. Such. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Weird, right?
interesting. Yeah, it should normally, so there's a couple different ways that you could do this. The way that I do my dodge and burn layer is using the 50% gray layer, and it's pretty easy to set up. What you're going to want to do is to hold down Option and click on that same new layer box that we clicked on to create that clone stamp cleanup, and then you'll get this new layer dialog box. From here, I usually just title it 50G. You could title it DMB, whatever, whatever it is, so that and later on when you go back to it that that's what you did.
Sure.
So give it a name, change this to soft light, and then you'll get this box that says fill with soft light, neutral color, 50% gray. You want to check that, and then just hit OK. And now you'll see it's just a gray box, right? Nothing happened. Just turn it off and on. However, what we can do now, and before we do that, actually, I'm going to go to my adjustments.
And you have a quick question.
Yes.
So what are your brush details, flow, etc.? So like when you're doing this, what are your settings for that?
So these are the settings that I have right now, as far as the brush settings. And usually some of these other things would be turned on. I guess I haven't, when I reinstalled Photoshop, it
But
jacked
do you
everything
tend
up.
to paint with 100% opacity and 100% flow, or do you bring the flow down?
No, I bring it down. So I'll show you that here in a sec.
Sure.
So let me fix some of these things here and see. All right. So before I do that, let me show you this really quick, which is you want to add, before you start doing stuff to this dodge and burn layer, add a black and white layer, which is basically just here in the adjustment section, and click black and white. It'll make this layer. And this is basically just like a help layer so that you could see contrast in the image. So you could see the parts of the image basically that you would need to target with this tool. And then, so we'll go to the brush. You want to make sure if you're trying to lighten part of the image, you need to be on the white. If you hit X on your keyboard, it'll switch it to black. So if I paint on this, it's going to be burning. So I'll just show you what that looks like. See how it makes everything dark. I'll get rid of that. If I hit X and I do this, this is now going to build up and it's going to make everything kind of bright. So show you before and after, right? So that's what dodging does. Now, as far as the settings for the brush, I keep my opacity at 100%. And depending on the image and depending on your level of comfort, I would personally, if I was starting out and I've never dodged and burned before, I would have my flow at like 1%.
Wow.
And that builds this effect up like really, really slow and really lightly. You don't have to be as careful and as meticulous if you just have it at a 1% flow. However, as you get better, you can go to 2 or 3 or whatever. For me, I typically don't go higher than 3% because I feel like sometimes I go too heavy on the images. And so, usually around a 3% flow is like the max for me, but to each their own.
I'm gonna have to look at my images again. I think I went up to 15 for flow.
15. Wow. Yeah. So you're a pro. So like you might be able to get away with 15. I feel like if I do 15, any little stroke that I do, I'm going to be like, oh man, I overdid it.
Right.
So keeping it at a lower number just makes it to where if you mess up or you went too far with it, it's really easy. Like
Probably
it just
blends
gradually
better,
builds it up.
more progressive.
Yes.
And yeah. So.
Definitely. So I'm going to keep it at 3 just to keep things kind of simple. But you could see here, and I'm going to create a blank layer just so that you guys all see what I'm seeing. I'm going to bring this flow up. So what this black and white layer does is I can see contrast. So right away, like this area right here, I could see that this area is darker than the areas to the side of it. And if you see the image kind of pulled back, right? If I turn this thing off, it almost makes it look like she has like a little bit of a black eye, which she doesn't. So these are things that for me, when I do dodge and burn, like I don't want that. I want to make sure that that is, you know, taken care of and that's addressed. So that's what dodge and burn is going to do. So I'm just going to zoom in and using that 5% flow, I'm at 99%. Let's go to 3% flow. We'll make the brush a little bit bigger. And I just kind of go over these areas very lightly, very carefully. And all I'm trying to do is just lighten these parts of the image up so that when you see the image far away, like when you pull back from the image, that it doesn't look like she has, you know, black eye. Like
Sure.
that's not a good look, right? So typically I'm not going to go through the whole process because dodge and burn could be a whole class in and of itself. And I really want to talk about the color grading side. But essentially, this is what I'm doing is going through the image and darkening and lightening certain parts and trying to really just kind of smooth out the transitions from highlights to shadows throughout the image. So, you know, relatively simple. Some of the areas of the image that are already bright, I tend to go over them again to kind of just brighten them up. So like you see this streak here on the nose, right above the on the eyelid, here on the mouth, on the lip. I tend to brighten highlights on the chin. And of course, on the forehead, this is where I probably will spend the majority of the time because you can see here that this area with the makeup is a little bit spotty. So this is stuff where I would try to dodge and burn this. But there's another technique that I also use, which I'll show you in a moment, because this is kind of a pain in the butt to try to dodge and burn and get it to be smooth. But essentially, that's how you dodge and burn. And this is what my dodge and burn looked like after I was done. Go back here.
Nice.
So that was the before and after. Any questions up to this point?
No, it's good though, but I'm going to bring down my flow, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like I say, if 15 is working for you, stick with it. But for me, I don't know, man. I don't trust myself.
I mean, I think I've been
15
using
is-
it more for like my, you know, surreal composites and kind of adding dramatic
Right.
contrasts. But for realistic retouching, I think I'll bring it down for sure.
Definitely. Definitely. So the next thing that I do is frequency separation. And like I mentioned before, there's certain parts of the image where you'll use that blank layer for the clone cleanup and it just doesn't do what you need it to do. So with frequency separation, I'm able to kind of go through those different areas and kind of clean those things up a little bit more. There's also another thing that I do, which is to add this contrast layer. And you'll notice that it's like a help layer. It really sharpens the image overall. So you could see the texture a little bit better. And you can kind of see what areas of the image you might need to, you know, clean up a little bit better. So I'm going to set this up super quick. I'm not going to spend a lot of time because I do want to spend time on other things, especially talking about color here. But I think this is all kind of important and it's all part of the process. So usually what I would do is to create a stamped layer, which you would do Command Option Shift E, and then you duplicate that layer. I'm going to turn off this, turn this off. We'll call this high. We'll call this low. We're going to turn off our high layer. So we're just on our low layer right now. And by the way, if you have any questions about how to set this up, there's like a gajillion in one videos. So that's why I'm kind of going through it quickly. On this specific layer here, we'll go to blur, Gaussian blur. And essentially what I want to do is kind of blur this image to where you blur all of the details, but you kind of have this like soft transition of color, right? Because most of what I do on the low layer is just kind of smoothing colors and blending colors. So, I mean, in this case, 9 is fine. So we'll just select that. We'll turn on our high layer. We'll go to image and apply image. And from here, I just goofed up the entire image. So, you know, but we're going to fix it. We'll go to our, here we go. We'll go to our layer. We'll select low. We'll click inverted. And we're going to change this to add. Okay, so this is the settings for a 16-bit image, which is what I'm currently working on. If you need the settings for an 8-bit image, again, it's online. Just search frequency separation and you can get those exact settings, but hit OK. And then this is what the image looks like at this point. And then we're going to go to our blend mode. We're going to go to linear light. Sorry, hold on. Was it? Yeah. Okay. Well, that's interesting. Anyway, so normally that's how it would be. I'm not sure what I just did here. That's interesting.
What's
I haven't
happening?
had enough coffee today. Well, it's looking mighty crunchy. It's set to
So
linear.
more extreme.
Yeah, this one is also set to linear, which was the original. So I must have done something. Let me back out here. Let's reverse this here. Let's go through our options here. Yeah, that's interesting. It's supposed to be linear light, but it looks really crunchy. So at any rate, again, just look up frequency separation online. You'll see the exact steps. I actually have a action that you can download, but
Cool.
this is what it normally would look like. Like the image basically will look exactly the same. But the cool thing is when you go to this high layer, now you could use your clone stamp tool. You can use your healing brush tool. You can use all these different tools to basically retouch the image the exact same way that I showed you all earlier with the clone stamp tool, except you're doing it with this. And on that low layer, you're actually able to kind of blend colors. So if you have your patch tool selected, let's say, for example, like this area right here has like a little bit of a darker color. So I could select this and then I could go here where this area is a little bit brighter. And now you could see if I turn this off and on, basically it just kind of changed that color so it's not so dark. So that's how you can kind of smooth out some of the color transitions. So super, super simple, really easy to do. Now, let's talk about the color side of things, because I'm noticing here, I'm going to skip through a couple of these things and I'll come back
I was going
to
to say, Miguel, I was going to say that
Mhm.
it's nice to see this process, because I've seen some people think that they can just do a duplicate of the layer, blur it, and then go back with a layer mask and let the eyes and the details come through. I'm like, no.
Yeah, it's different for everybody. Like I say, I mean, I've seen people use instead of doing when they set up their frequency separation, instead of doing the blur, the Gaussian blur, they'll use like median or dust and scratches. Like there's
Right.
a bunch of different ways to do it, and it just depends on what you're trying to accomplish with your image. For me, the way that I do it, like this is basically like step by step the way I do it, and I actually have it saved as an action. It's not saved on this computer, or it would have made my life really easy. But once you have all the steps down pat, you can just save it as an action and then just hit play on that, and it will create all
Nice.
the layers, title it, do all that good stuff.
Excellent.
So it's pretty cool. And actually, you know what? There is one other thing I want to show you all here before we kind of continue on, which is the inverted high pass layer. This was something that I kind of alluded to earlier. The inverted high pass, if you look at this area of the forehead here, if you remember, I was saying that dodging and burning in this area to kind of smoothen these transitions, it's a little bit difficult with dodge and burn. With inverted high pass, it does a relatively good job across the entire forehead. And the way that you set this up, you basically will merge all of your layers, right? Just like we did before, which is Command Option Shift E. And then from here, you are going to go to Filter, Other, High Pass. And then you get this, which looks really crazy. The main key thing that you want to understand is whatever radius it is that you choose, you want to make sure that it's divisible by 3. That's like a very, very important thing. So I'm going to pick 30 in this case. And part of the reason that I am picking 30 is I want to see kind of like the sharpness, the detail. I can see a lot of the pores here. If I selected 1 as the radius, you really can't see very much. Or if I do 10, I mean, I guess you could still see some detail there. So, but you want to make sure that you're selecting a, not 1015. You want to make sure that you're selecting a radius that's divisible by 3 where you can see some detail. Let's just pick 15 for kicks here. Now what you're going to do is hold Command I to invert that. Okay. And then we are going to go to linear light. All right, so we have this on linear light. This looks kind of wacky, but you'll notice here on this forehead area, if you remember, you kind of see some like highlights and shadows, and there's these like what I call rivers of highlights and like little patches of shadow. But you notice when I turn on this inverted high pass layer, it kind of smoothed that whole area out. Obviously, if I uploaded the image like this would not work for anybody. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go back to filter. We're going to go to blur. We're going to go to Gaussian blur. And then whatever that number was that we chose before, which was 15, you want to choose a third of that. So we'll choose 5, right? 15 divided by 3. Hopefully I can still do math today. We'll hit OK. All right, so there it is. It kind of smoothed out that area, but it does look kind of crazy. So at this point, we'll hide this layer behind a mask. All right, so now if I turn that off and on, nothing happens. But if I go to my brush, and just like we did with dodge and burn, I could actually, at a very low flow, I might even go to like 1, just to be really safe, because I don't want to go too heavy with this. I'm just going to brush over this area. And the inverted high pass is going to help to basically smooth this area out. Okay, so, hey, Siri, what's happening here? Go away. So basically, that's how you would create that inverted high pass. And I'm not going to do the whole thing because I've already done it. So you can see the before and the after here. It's a very subtle adjustment, right?
Right.
So that basically just kind of smooths out those transitions.
Cool.
Now, there's a couple of different things. So once I've done all of this, basically, hopefully when it's all said and done, the skin portion of the retouch should be done. In this case, I actually did more dodge and burn. So you could see the before and after as I turn this on. You could do dodge and burn as many times as you want. Sometimes I'll do 2 or 3 different passes of dodge and burn at different steps in the process. So I basically just did that again. This is where we get to color. So here, what I've done is I titled this Apply Image, because what I will do is, in order to color grade the image, this is a, let's go here. This is your color balance layer. So normally what you could do is if you just click color balance, right, you'll get this white layer mask on the image. And basically you can go here and you could select midtones, shadows, and highlights. And you can inject colors into these different areas, right? You could change the colors. So like in the midtones, I can increase the reds, start kind of playing with the greens and the magentas to kind of get something that I like. And then of course, kind of tweak all of these to your own taste, get it to look the way that you want it to look. Go into shadows, you can kind of do the same thing. Again, just kind of pumping cyan into the shadows, just trying to get something that looks kind of good. So you could do this, but what I don't like about this specific method of just adding the color balance layer and then just tweaking highlights, midtones, and shadows is that it's applying it across all of the midtones in the entire image, which for some pictures is totally fine, but for other images, it doesn't work as good. So what I found is there's a bunch of different ways that you could apply masks to your image where these color adjustments won't take place globally. They'll just take place in certain areas of the image. And one of the ways to do that is with Apply Image. So here's how we do that. Click on Adjustments. Just like we did before, we'll click on Color Balance. And we'll go up to, we'll go to Image, and we'll go to Apply Image. All right. And you don't really have to change very much on this. Whatever it is that it's set to, just hit OK. And you'll notice now that it has created a layer mask. And so when you have these layer masks created, anything that is pure white is fully revealed. So like, let's say, for example, if I had something that was purple, and then I go into my color balance layer and I start changing the color from purple to green. If the layer mask was totally white like it was before, then it's going to affect everything, right? But in this case, because we have kind of this grayed out image, everything that is pure white will show through those adjustments completely. Everything that is pure black, those adjustments will not show. And then every color tonality in between that will show up to a certain degree, right? So everything that's pure white will show up totally. Everything that's pure black will not show up at all. And everything that's gray basically is going to show up more or less. So for example, forehead area is going to show a little bit. The dark parts of the hair, because it's darker, it's not going to show that color. It's not going to affect it as much because that's the apply image layer mask that I've created. So what does that do? Now, if I start adjusting my midtones, instead of it doing it to the entire image, it's applying it a little bit differently because it's only applying it in the way that this mask has been created. So it's going to give a little more here because this is closer to white. But in the hair area, it's not going to apply it as much. Does that make sense? Hopefully.
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right. So that's essentially one of the ways that I would color grade an image is using this color balance layer, jumping in between midtones, shadows, and highlights, and just kind of playing around with this and tweaking it until I get something that looks kind of cool. The funny thing about this is that every time I retouch an image, if I go back to it like a week later, I might color grade it completely different. So I don't know if y'all are like me, but like I'm already starting this, little basic color grade, and I kind of like how this looks, but I think this is what I ended up with when I did it the first time. I kind of went with a little bit warmer of a color grade. So,
Sure. Miguel, I just wanted to let someone know. Someone asked a question. Wendy asked, "Will this video be available afterwards?" Yes, as always. These are recorded, and we will share the link afterwards. Thank you.
Sweet, perfect. Yeah, and if you all have any questions, let me know in the comments too. So this is the other thing that we can do. So this is a more kind of extreme mask here. So you could see, like I mentioned to y'all earlier, if it's black, then the effect doesn't show, and everything that's white, the effect shows fully. So what I ended up doing here was I created that same color balance layer, and what I did was I wanted to target the background. I wanted to change the color of the background. So you'll see if I turn this off and on, it's not affecting her, but it's just affecting the color of the background. So I could go in there and let's say if I wanted to tweak the background color to be, whatever complementary colors or anything that I want to do, I can essentially do that without really affecting her as much. This mask probably wasn't as clean as it should be. So, if that's the case, you could just go back. Actually, there's a few ways you could do this. You could click on the layer mask and you could start, sorry, hold on, let me go back here. You could start painting and it would, of course, you want to make sure you're at a full flow here. But you could start basically painting in these areas and kind of adjust the mask. But of course, you're not seeing exactly what it is. So you could always do it this way where, like I got some in the hair, which I don't want. So I'll just brush over that. And so you could essentially just kind of fix the mask so that it's only affecting those specific areas. Of course, depending on the colors you're picking as well, it could show up a little more or less, just kind of depending on what you pick, right? So really easy for you to be able to change the color of your background to whatever it is that you want, just by adding that color balance layer. The other thing that you could do, and I didn't actually do it to this image, but I'm going to show this to y'all as a kind of like a bonus. What's really, really powerful with color grading is, again, creating these masks. Another way you could do it is if you go into your channels, you'll notice here that your image is kind of separated into RGB, right? So red, green, and blue. So if I start turning these things off, you're going to notice that you get these black and white layer masks. So this is the green channel. So you see what that looks like. So let's say if I was to create a mask using the green channel, you're going to notice that this area is black. So this area is not going to get affected very much by any color grades that I do. However, her face, neckline, all that kind of stuff, all this is going to get affected to some degree. If I go to red, you notice that the red, her skin is a lot brighter. And that's because for the majority of skin tones that are out there, the predominant color is red. So obviously, if I created a layer mask that was targeting the reds, this is going to target her skin tone quite a bit. And obviously, it's going to affect other parts of the image, but it's really, really kind of affecting her face, her skin overall. If I go to the blues, you notice here with this specific image, like it's not going to affect the skin tones as much. So depending on what you're trying to do, like if you're trying to do something really cool with kind of like adjusting skin tones and things of that nature, you can create a mask using these channels. And so let's just say, for example, we're going to make a channel mask out of the blue layer. So what we're going to do is we have that blue layer selected because we have the eye turned on. And we're going to we're going to hold Command and we're going to click on that blue mask. You're going to get all the marching ants. Okay, it's going to look crazy, but bear with me because this is really, really cool. Once we have done that and you have the marching ants, we'll go back to layers. We'll go up to adjustments. And anything that you click on right now, what's going to end up happening is that adjustment is going to have this layer mask attached to it. So we have done color balance. You could also color grade using hue saturation. You can color grade using curves. All of these things are going to give you different effects. Selective color also works. Since we've been doing this with color balance, I'll just pick that. And so again, turning this off and on, nothing happened, right? Because we haven't made any adjustments here. But you'll notice that if you click on the layer mask, this is the exact layer mask that was created when we selected that blue channel. Right. And it's pretty cool because now I could go, for example, into midtones and I could start tweaking these colors and I could adjust just those areas, right? So certain images, like I say, this right here does like some really, really heavy lifting when it comes to color grading images. And there's a bunch of different ways for you to be able to do that, right? So here's before, here's after, right? So that's one way. I could turn this off.
So here's a question, and I might be jumping the gun, but would you tend to maybe click on the red, the green, and the blue and create 3 different adjustment layer type of masks and then tweak those?
Yes.
Cool.
Yes, absolutely. So yes and no. Actually, let me back up. Yes and no. You could do that. However, I want to draw everyone's attention to the fact down here, if you see the size of this file so far, it's 2.3 gigs. I happen to have a MacBook that is pretty beefy. So right now, as I'm doing these different things, it's making it look kind of easy. When you do this on your computer, if you don't have like a really strong, like a computer with a lot of RAM and that has good performance, if you were to create these layers, the file is going to get really big and that might bog down the performance of your Photoshop. So you can do that. And for me, I would, because I could do that and performance is still going to be the same. But you just want to be careful because you could make this file exceedingly huge.
Sure.
And you could also create this as an action as well, which is pretty cool. So essentially just do all the steps that I'm showing and just record it as an action. But yeah, totally. You could do that.
Excellent.
So now what I've done is selected that red channel. I'll go back to layers, go to adjustments. And this time, just to kind of change things up here, we'll go to curves. Okay, so now I have a curves layer that has that red channel selected as the mask. And now we could do some different things here as well. So I could go to, let's say, greens, and you could do some stuff here where you're kind of playing around with the colors in that area, right? So you can do some pretty kind of wild and crazy things. Obviously, this is like one of those things where you don't want to go, super crazy and make like really extreme changes, you want to make sure you're doing it just little by little. But you could select these different colors here and just kind of adjust the colors as you see fit. All right, so that's one way to do it there. We'll go back to this again. I don't think I did green yet, so let's do green. Again, I'll hold down Command, click on that green, go back to my layers, go to adjustments. This time, let's do hue saturation. Okay, so now I have a hue saturation layer that has the green channel mask applied to it. And we can leave this on master, actually, just kind of play around with this. So you could see that I'm only adjusting those specific parts of the image to the degree that the mask allows me to adjust it. Okay, so I'm really hoping that that is translating, because it's such a like crazy powerful thing for you to be able to like do targeted adjustments. And the other thing too is, let's say if you have this layer mask and it's affecting certain things that you don't want it to affect, like maybe her shirt, you could always go in there and with, let's say, a black brush, you could basically go in there and you could just get rid of that, right? So you could just paint that out so that it's not affecting the shirt. Obviously, I'm doing this very crudely, but if you take the time to like sit there and just kind of like really carefully zoom in, right, and get really close up here, and you can get this to look relatively clean. And then, whoops, go back. What am I doing there? There we go. So you could go ahead and kind of
like,
get rid of that.
Is it supposed to be kind of erasing from the layer mask? Because it just looks like you're painting black, though, for now.
It does. Yeah. So because I'm only painting on the layer mask.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, so it's not painting it on the actual image. All I'm doing is just adjusting the layer mask so that, again, everything that's pure black is not being affected at all. So at this point, looking at this layer mask, and that's a really good question, looking at this layer mask, her shirt is not going to be affected at all, right? So you could see if I go here and let's say I change the colors really crazy, right? Anything else, because it's grayish, it's going to be affected. But because her shirt is completely taken out from this layer mask, it's not going to affect it. Cool. That's kind of a cool thing.
Yeah, it's very cool. That's helpful.
Yeah. So layer mask that's like the most powerful thing when it comes to color grading. And it's just understanding that each of these adjustments, and the ones I would use for color grading would be selective color. You could use channel mixer. You could use color balance. You can use.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Just your opinion. Are you a fan of Pratik Naik's Infinite Color?
I am.
Yeah.
So absolutely. Fantastic tool. And again, there's a lot of different tools out there that you could use for color grading. I tend to do a couple of different things. So you could use that. You could use Infinite Color, and it's fantastic. You could use this method, which is a very kind of like, you try and you tweak different things until you get it to look good for whatever it is that you're trying to do. The other thing that I also like to do for color grading is to actually use a plugin called Exposure.
Okay.
And so I'll show you guys that too. So I'm going to stamp all of this stuff. So I just created that stamp layer. None of this is turned on. Go to Filter, Exposure.
The stamp
software.
layer is a composite, doing like Command Option Shift E. Is that?
Yes.
Yeah.
So essentially by doing that, by pressing those buttons, what it's doing is it's taking all of these adjustments that are underneath it, all of this stuff that you see with the eyes turned on, and it just merges them all into this one single layer. So I like to do that because if I had this selected and I tried to open, actually, I'll just show you. Let's pretend like I didn't make that, right? I have this layer. If I go to Filter, I can't start up Exposure software. So if you merge the layer, select it, and then go to Filter, Exposure X7, and this is a plugin. Essentially what this does is it allows you to apply film-like presets to your images. And so a lot of the old film stocks are basically, added to this program. So for me, like I love using the color film slide preset because these are kind of like the medium format colors. And if you just hover over them, you can kind of see what it is that it's doing to your image.
Okay.
Right. So let's say this agfa chrome. If I hold down space bar, you can see, zoom in close.
It's kind of strange
you can see
not showing that though. Like I see the layers panel, the properties panel, and then I see a bunch of, you know, different closed panels into like a tool strip, but I don't see the plugin.
Oh,
Yeah.
it doesn't show you the exposure.
Yeah, Chris is saying that too. Note that we cannot see that in the stream.
Hold on, let me discard this really quick.
You might have to open it as its own panel and float it on the right side or something.
Oh yeah, because I know, because I'm streaming just Photoshop.
That's right.
That's why. So hold on, let me do.
Don't change anything and disappear.
No. So I'm going to stop the screen share.
Oh
and
no.
We'll go to share. No, I'm confident we got this. So before I do that, let me open that. Let me open filter exposure X7. All right. So now if I go into StreamYard, I should be able to go to Window, exposure 7, and share. Now you should be able to see.
Great. So yeah, we totally can see it now.
There it is. Now, okay.
Is this something that you worked on, or is this something that you recommend?
This is something that I highly recommend. This is like a third-party plugin.
Sure.
I use this a lot. I know a lot of photographers that use this. And so keep this in mind. What I'm about to show you right now, you could use it as is. Like you could retouch and color grade an image in exposure X7 and you could just like kick it out into the world and it could be done. However, I pair up exposure X7 with all of the stuff that I just showed you with creating these channel masks and layer masks, you know, using apply image, using channel masking to be able to take this effect that you're seeing and turn it into something different. So
cool.
let me show you rather than
sounds good. Sounds good.
Yap about it. So these are like, for example, these are Polaroid emulations, right? So if you hover over these, it kind of shows you what the effect would look like. And again, sometimes the effect is like perfect as is. It's like, it might be exactly what you're trying to do, in which case, great. You know, you've got a really quick color grade. Most of the time, what I end up doing is I will find one, like say this Agfa Chrome 1000. If I select that and I hold down spacebar, you can see kind of the before and after of what it's doing. So I kind of like that. I like the contrast that it added. However, I don't know if this shows up on the stream. Looks like it does, but it adds a lot of grain to the image.
It looks, yeah, I can see the detail.
Yeah, it's like maybe if I do it like this, you could see there's a lot of grain that's been added. I like grain. I have no problem with it, but you can actually go into this tool here and you could actually adjust the amount of grain in different parts of the image, which I tend to do relatively often. But you could also just turn it off if you want. So if you turn it off, I'll turn off focus as well, because sometimes these presets actually sharpen the image. So for example, if you turn focus on, you could do all kinds of different sharpening. And I'll show you what that looks like. So you can see it's like mega crispy.
Yeah.
Not necessarily what we want to do. So oftentimes what I'll do is I'll turn off the, I'll turn that off so that I'm just getting the color, right? I'm getting the color and the exposure from that preset. So I'll simply just hit apply here and give it a second or two. Might be more than a few seconds, again, depending on your computer and the processor, graphics card, all that good stuff. But now because I'm back in Photoshop, it kicked us out. So
yeah, I was gonna say it popped away.
Share, share screen, and go back to Window and Photoshop. All right.
There we are.
There we go. Cool. All right, back in business. We'll hide that. Okay, so now you can see if I do before and after, you'll notice that we have that new layer that was created that now has that exposure 7 color adjustment applied to it. we could actually go to this layer that we made earlier where we stamped everything together, and you could just delete that. Because again, if we don't, this file size is just going to continue to get bigger and bigger with each layer that we add.
Sure.
But here's the cool thing, right? So we created this layer that has the full changes, like all of the changes from that preset have been applied to this layer. But what we can do is we could actually just add a mask. So if you click down here, you have this little rectangle with a circle. And when I click that, it added this white layer mask to the image. Okay. So if you remember earlier where I was telling you, you can add or kind of like create different types of layer masks, you can go back up to, for example, image, apply image, and we could hit OK. And you'll notice now that that effect is going to be kind of changed up a little bit. So if you do before and after, it is a little bit lighter in some areas and a little bit darker in different areas as far as how much of that effect is actually applying to the image. And another cool thing you could do too is, let's say if you look at this layer mask here and you notice that that's what it looks like right now. If I hit Command I, you could actually invert the mask, right? So basically picture this like just kind of swapping everything. So like everything that was bright now turns dark, and everything that's dark turns bright. So I just kind of inverted that mask. So now if I turn on that effect, again, it's going to apply that layer that I created, but it's going to color the image a little bit differently. And realistically, it's not going to do as much to the overall image because it's really just affecting the hair, a little bit of the background, some of the highlights on her jacket. So, you know, if I hit Command I, we can swap that back. And now you can see it's kind of tweaking the image a little bit differently.
So, so a question, yeah, pretty cool. So a question I have is with Exposure X7, I did a quick search on my mobile, and one of the things that's listed with the bundle is also the integrated blow-up high-quality photo enlargement. Have you used that? Is that pretty good quality?
I haven't used it mainly because I haven't had a need for it. Right. Most of my full frame cameras, like my Alpha 7R4 shoots at like 61 megapixels. The Alpha 1 that I shoot with is 50 megapixels. Right. So I haven't run into too many scenarios that I've needed to blow up an image super huge. And listen, I've had photos blown up to the size of billboards, and you could do that at 24 megapixels. So right. I haven't found a specific need for it, but
have you heard good things?
Yeah, I've heard it's great for people that need that type of thing. Like it works great. And they do have that in the bundle, but you could also just buy the exposure plugin by itself. Right. And I think it comes out to be a little bit less. And then the upgrades are kind of cheap. Like they're like half price or something like that, maybe a little bit less. And they come out with updates all the time. So they add new film stocks. There's a bunch of different things actually, which I didn't show you within the program itself. So let me go back to it. You're not going to be able to see it, but I'm just going to verbally tell you.
Sure.
You could also add layers. So let's say, for example, within Exposure X7, and I used to do this all the time. What you could do is you could actually have, let's say I had that first layer that I applied that color adjustment to, which was the Agfa Chrome 1000 RS. Let's say I wanted to mix that with a different preset, like let's say like a Kodak Portra 400, just picking a film stock off the top of my head. Within Exposure, you could actually apply multiple different presets, and then you could adjust the opacity of each one so that you create this like customized color preset within Exposure. And so it's really cool. You could do like multiple layers of different exposure presets. And then again, when you get them into Photoshop, you could turn around and you could say, okay, now that I've got this like custom made, exposure layer, you can further kind of modify that and tweak that by using these layer masks, channel masks, apply
Right.
image to kind of target certain parts of the image.
Great. Cool. Very cool.
Any other questions in the chat?
Yeah, let us know. Any questions for this process?
Yep. So the last thing that I'll say, because I know we're a little over on time, but last thing that I'll cover is the selective color.
Cool.
And this is another really powerful tool that you can use to be able to, of course, as the name says, you could selectively color certain parts of the image. So you could select these colors here, and essentially any magentas that are within the image will be able to be modified by this. So if you're not sure if the image has any kind of magenta or anything like that in it, just as an example, you could just select magenta for the color. And if you go down to blacks and you change your slider, you could see that if I take it to 0 and then bring it all the way up, you can see there's a little tiny bit of magenta that's in the image, right? Versus, let me go to 0. Whoops. Versus if I was to go up to, let's say, something like red, which I know there's red, and you know it's red because we talked about it. So now you could see that if I move the black points, we could see that this is the part of the image that the reds are kind of residing, right? So the background, you notice the background is not really being affected very much. So let's take that to 0. Okay. So now what I could do is I can basically change the colors of the reds, right? So I can go to cyan and I can kind of boost certain colors, but it's only really affecting that red channel. And so here's the thing, or it's not affecting the red channel, but it's affecting the reds in the image. One of the really powerful things here is that, let's say, for example, I'm trying to tweak my skin tones, and I want to get my skin tones to have just kind of like a different, I don't know, just like an interesting editorial type of vibe. I could go to the reds here. I could kind of tweak these colors, right? And of course, you're seeing it being applied to the entirety of the image. So if I do before and after here, and I'm just looking at her face, okay, because obviously like the hair just got like a pretty big boost in reds, right? But if I'm just looking at her skin tone, maybe I like the way that the face looks right now. So what you could do is you could take that adjustment and just do Command I, and that's going to hide that color behind this black mask. And if you remember, like I've been saying, you could take this white brush. I have it set to 100%. Make that brush a little bit bigger. And now I could just go to the skin tones, right? Wherever her skin is. And I could just paint that color adjustment, right? And it looks kind of crazy right now because, you know, it's not being applied to the entirety of the image. But essentially, if I wanted to kind of warm up the skin tones, this is one of many different ways that you could do this. And again, I'm not saying this is the right way. I'm not saying you're going to do this in every image, because right now this is pretty extreme. But you can see that I could kind of inject some reds into the skin tone here. And all I'm doing is just kind of very crudely brushing over her skin. And then I will show you, get the fingers there, cool. If I click on this layer mask, it's going to be crazy looking, but that's what the layer mask looks like. It's a work of art. So now when I turn that off and on, you see that it's only affecting the face. And you could actually go to your opacity up here and you can dial that down so that it's not super crazy, right? So let's say if I put that to 37% and do before and after, you'll notice, let me zoom in a little closer. If I turn that off and on, you notice the effect is really light. Double clicked. There you go. So it's just another way, again, for you to be able to kind of color grade and tweak your image. There's a lot of different ways to do this. Same thing with the channel mask as well. This is one other thing, and I'll turn it over to you for any kind of questions that might be in the room. But let's say if I wanted to change the color of her jacket, a bunch of different ways you could do it. if I'm here in this red channel, you'll notice that her jacket is like pretty much white. So I can go to layers, go back to adjustments. I can add a, let's say a hue saturation layer. And then I could change the color, let's say to something purple, right? And then I could invert by holding Command I, right? So it just hid that adjustment behind this black mask. And then you could take your brush, you can kind of paint over the jacket, right? And now we're changing the color of the jacket. So there's a bunch of different ways. Like each image kind of is different, and it presents different opportunities and different things that you may want to kind of like play around with and kind of tweak. But hopefully this kind of gets the wheels spinning in terms of like different things, different ideas that you're able to apply to your portraits. This specific one, I kind of went in really heavy with a lot of different things, because if you wanted to do that, you could totally do it. And the image will kind of support it, but each image is going to be different. If you shoot in a place that's very colorful, you might have more opportunity to kind of do different things to the image. But yeah, so this is just kind of an idea just to show you again, very crudely, but just kind of adjusting and targeting just the jacket. And it took, you know, just a few minutes. And you can see here, these areas here that are black means that I didn't do a good enough job brushing over it. So just go here, see the mask, and then just fill in these little areas. I already know, looking at the full image, that this is stuff that I do want it to be like the correct color. So, and I noticed here, if I zoom in, this is, again, very crudely done. I could see that I got some of it there. Like, I don't want to affect this right here. So I changed it back over to black, and we're hiding that behind the layer mask.
Right.
So we don't want to change our skin colors to purple. But, you know, I could see here, all of this here could be changed. And here, and all of this, right? So we're just brushing, kind of just finessing this mask a little bit. And then what's cool is, after the fact, right, after you've created this mask, let's say if you decide, you know what, maybe you're doing this for a client, you know, and the client's like, oh, you know, I kind of like that you changed the color to purple, but I actually don't like purple because it's like the worst color ever created. So could you do something different? Maybe you can make it into some other color for me. Because this is a non-destructive process, we could actually go back to our hue and saturation layer, and we could actually continue to modify these colors, right? We could change the colors pretty much to whatever hue it is that we want. Obviously, you can see I missed some parts here on the shoulders, but certain colors, depending on how far away you are from the original color, you may not have that problem where you're seeing it so kind of like extreme. Like I went from like a pink to purple, and you know, you don't really see too much of those areas. But if I go to blue, that makes a pretty big difference. So I would have to go back into that mask and just continue to, you know, tweak that layer mask. You can see I did a little overspill here. So,
right, but I think everyone knows, you know, that we're,
and
you know,
just
it's a
make sure
time
that
thing.
your brush is at 100%, and just kind of go over those areas until you get everything looking perfect, looking flawless. So, any questions while because this is, I'm OCD.
Any
I
questions?
can't leave this image until I have these little.
Can you hear me,
here.
Miguel?
But any questions?
Miguel, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Not sure you can hear me. Can general population hear me?
I think.
Can the viewers hear me?
But I can't hear you anymore.
Yeah.
Let me see.
Let me know if you can hear me or Miguel in the live. Let us know in the comments. Can you hear both of us? I think everyone can hear both of us, but you can't hear me.
Speaker.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Chris.
Okay. You can still hear me, right?
I can hear you. Can you hear me though?
Now I could hear you. I guess while I was talking, my headset just kind of like died out. So
That's
if
all
you were
right.
saying anything, I
So
could
yeah,
hear.
so one thing I would say is, you know, with these lives, people take this in and they really appreciate it, and they go back and they watch the recordings a lot. So if they don't ask questions, it's no nothing to do with your presentation. It's just they're kind of taking it in. So
Right, definitely. I get it. I've been on these streams before as well, and you know, I totally get it. For the benefit of those people who are here, hopefully, you know, if they had any types of questions in regards to kind of like that color grading process, hopefully this answered some of them. And
yeah, there's some great techniques here. I appreciate it.
yeah,
Yes, someone says a lot of good stuff to digest.
good. That's what I wanted.
Yep.
That's what I wanted. And again, you know, just like I said at the beginning of the broadcast, these things that I'm showing you here, you may not use these on every image, right? You may have, and this is very much the case for me, you might have techniques in your back pocket that like you might use once in a blue moon, right? It might be something that like it's just this one specific image. This client says, "Hey, I need to know if you could do this specific thing," and it's like, well, geez, I haven't done that in probably like 2 or 3 years. But if you understand how some of these tips work, you're able to kind of apply them in different ways and across different images and kind of get it to be, you know, specifically the way that you would like it to be. So,
Right. And one thing that I would add is if you know, rewatch this video and you look at the process, always remember that he's using adjustment layers, so it's non-destructive. So he can go back and with the mask, he can add more or take away more. And then with some of them that are especially color focused, he can, as he showed before, he can change the color of what is selected. So always remember that is, if much as possible, try to use non-destructive editing things like adjustment layers.
absolutely. I probably didn't talk about that enough. And I 100% agree with you. That's the most important part of everything that I'm showing you right now. Everything that I'm showing you could be adjusted. And after the fact, if for whatever reason, it's like, oh man, I went really just too far with this whole thing, you'd always go back and you can adjust those things. And, you know,
Yeah.
you can tweak the opacity and just kind of lighten the effect. If you just went a little bit too heavy handed, if you need to get rid of it altogether, you could do that. So yeah, 100%. This whole process is 100% non-destructive. You could tweak it later. You can delete it later.
Right. So you could save the file, layered file, and then come back like a week, 2 weeks, a month later, and still then change the color if you want. So that's
Exactly.
the beauty of it.
Yeah, and I'm gonna leave this here. This area here would definitely be something that you would have to like kind of tweak and kind of play around with because the hair is kind of covering up the jacket. So this is one where perhaps the playing with different adjustment layers would target just the jacket. And you wouldn't have to do this manually. But I'm kind of showing this to you in a manual fashion just so that you can get an
Sure.
idea for like, you know, this is definitely something that could be done if you're just trying to do it like down and dirty. You know, it's
That's
entirely
great
possible
techniques.
to do it.
Yeah. Well, any questions? Everybody? Don't be shy.
Yeah, don't be shy. No,
But in general, I think there's a lot of great techniques. So yeah, thank you very much. So
yeah, it was my pleasure. My pleasure.
So just to remind everyone too that you know, you can find Miguel online, so on his website, and then also on his YouTube. So make sure to put the junior at the end, right?
Yes, please do. You can, and if you search my name on YouTube, you're going to find me across like various different channels. I have content on my own YouTube channel. I also have content on Sony's official YouTube channel, which is Alpha Universe.
Right.
So it's more like Sony centric. So if you're a photographer and you're trying to learn specifically how Sony cameras work, I have content there. I have videos on Adorama TV. So I'm all over the place, but my YouTube channel is kind of like my home and my hub. And you know, any questions that you guys have, I would invite you all to like comment on my videos, because I read every single comment. So if you, let's say, watch one of my videos and you're like, how did you do this, that, and the other thing? And if I can't point you to a video and say, hey, I did exactly that in this video, I'll just make a video.
Great.
So, you know, very, very happy to help out the community however I can.
Fantastic. And then I just wanted to remind everyone that on my YouTube channel, Digital Art Drew, you can subscribe for my digital art, Photoshop and photography focused live streams like this. And I also post Photoshop tutorials, and I do a digital art talk with Sandra D Imagery. So please do consider subscribing and clicking the notification bell for that as well. So
absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I'm subscribed. You should be subscribed. Like,
yes,
y'all need to get on that.
That's right. Subscribe to us both. And so Hannah says, thank you, Miguel, for sharing. Thank you, Andrew, for another pleasant evening.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah, some really great techniques. So thank you very much. And make sure to subscribe to us both. And any questions for Miguel, just, reach out to him and let him know. And yeah, it was excellent. So thank you very much, Miguel.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks everybody for joining me.
Yeah, thanks everyone for being here.
Adios.